This video is designed to show you how to get started with Adjutant Introuvable. So Adjutant Introuvable is an auto strategy system for miniature war games. So it's designed for solo wargamers who want an opponent, something with good artificial intelligence that they can actually fight against. And that's what Adjutant Introuvable, or AI, intends to give you. Step one, set up the battlefield. So the terrain goes down, then deploy the player's forces. So this is where you put your army onto the terrain. And then last of all, you need to prepare your plan for the first moves or first few moves. What do you intend to do? What orders are you giving to your army? Now that your army is all set up, we go on to step two. And this is where Adjutant Introuvable starts to work out what he intends to do to fight this battle. So first of all, shuffle all the strategy cards from the Adjutant Introuvable rule set, and then randomly select 3 cards. Step 3, strategy choice. Adjutant Introuvable is now going to select the most suitable of those 3 strategy cards we selected in step 2. To do this, we need to divide the battlefield into 9 zones, and those zones are going to be labeled left, center, right as vertical columns, and as horizontal lines they're going to be 1, 2 and 3. The line numbered 1 is where Adjutant Introuvable is going to set up his forces. Now we need to analyze each zone, and we need to look for types of terrain that are defined within the rules of Adjutant Introuvable. So the terrain types are in this order: number 1, fort; number 2, closed; number 3, hills; number 4, open. So the first thing we're looking for is anything that could be defined as a fort. So this is going to be dependent on the rules you're actually using to fight your war game. The rules I'm using, if there's a village or a farm, it could be fortified and therefore classed as a fort. So we can see those identified already on this slide. You might have trenches, you might have other types of fortification on your battlefield, and they should be defined as fort. First, we defined the fort type zones. We've got 2. And now we look for closed zones. So closed can include woods, enclosures, streams, things like that, that would close down the terrain. So we can see that in one of the fort terrains, we've also got trees. If there was no fort there, that would be defined as closed. But because there's a fort, that takes priority over closed. Below that fort zone, there is a closed zone because it's got a stream in it. So that's closed because that's going to block easy movement within that zone. So we'll label that one as closed, and that's the only one, the only zone on that battlefield that we're going to call closed. We have defined fort zones, we've defined closed zones. Next, we're looking for hill zones. So this is any zone that has a hill in it that hasn't already been marked as either fort or closed. So we can see that we've got 2 marked there, center 3 and left 2. Any remaining zones we will define as open, and we can see we've got 4 marked there as open zones. You might have noticed some anomalies with the way I've defined zones. For example, right 3 I've put down as open, but there is some hill penetrating into that zone, but it's mostly open, so I've chosen to call it open. And then down the center 1 and center 2, you can see we've got some fields and a hedgerow there. So again, I've decided to mark those as open because in the wargaming rules I'm going to use, they don't significantly impact on the combat. Now Adjutant Introuvable starts to analyze strategy with terrain. So we're going to do this for each of the 3 strategies we've selected. It seems a bit complex at first, but you'll very quickly be able to work these out. So look at the bottom right and you see the card envelop from left. This is the first card we're going to look at, first strategy. And you can see we've got three forces, a left, a center, and a right force. The left force is a rapid advance force, the center is a holding force, and the right force is an advance force. So we've got the left, which is marked as red, the center, which is marked as green, and the right, which is marked as blue. Now look across onto the left side, and we can see that on the battlefield on the left, left 1 is fort, defined as fort, that zone. Left 2, that zone is defined as hills. Left 3, the zone is defined as open. Now back across to the right hand side, and let's have a look at that strategy choice card. That's got the terrain and mission matrix. And if we look along the red line, so this is the left force, the rapid advance force, we can see that for the fort, which is the first position where that force is going to be, if we read across, we can see fort at the top on the column and number 1 because we're in zone 1, and we can see we got 0 as a factor there. So that's our first factor. If we read across to hills and number 2 zone, we can see we've got a dash, which is a minus, so that's a -1. And then if we look across to the open and number 3 for the third zone, we can see we've got a plus, so that's a +1. So looking at the list over on the bottom left of the page now, so L1, left 1, there's a fort, that gives us a factor of 0. L2, left 2 zone, is hills, that gives us a factor of -1. And L3, which is the open zone, gives us a factor of +1. And if we add all those factors up together, we get 0 as a total. So we've got 0, then we go -1, so our total is -1, and then we're +1, so we're back to 0. So total 0. Now we do the same for the center force, the holding force, and this time looking across on the green row, we can see we're only interested in center 1 because that force is going to be holding, it's going to be stationary, it's not going to be advancing into zone 2 or zone 3. So we just need to look at the factor there. It's open terrain and it's a minus. So we get -1. So the total for that center force is -1. Do the same now for the right. Right is an advanced force, so we're looking at the first 2 zones, the closed zone and the fort zone. So on the strategy choice, we can see that we've got 0 for closed and -1 for the fort. So 0 -1 gives us a total of -1. And then adding all of those together, we've got 0 on the left, -1 in the center, -1 on the right, that gives us -2, plus a random factor. You see the dice there? Add a random factor in, it's a score of 4, so if you get a score of 4 to 5, that's +1. So we end up with a total of -1 points for the envelop from left strategy. So we now do the same for the equal attack strategy card. So if you look bottom right of the slide, you can see with the equal attack, we've only got forces that are going to advance. There's no rapid advance, there's no holding forces. So the left force is marked as red, that's advance. The center force, the green force, is also marked as advance. And the right force, the blue one, is also marked as advance. So that makes it a bit easier on our strategy choice card. We've only got to look down across on one line, which is marked in orange. Okay, over to our battlefield on the left side of the slide, we can see it's left 1 is fort. Back to the strategy choice card, looking down the column of fort, and number 1 marked there with a red circle is 0, so factor of 0. So L1 fort equals 0. And then advancing into zone 2, so left 2 we can see is hills. On the strategy choice card, on the column of hills, we've got that circle under number 2 because it's zone 2, and it's marked with a minus sign, so that's -1. So we've got fort at 0, hills at -1, so the total is -1. Remember that we're not looking at zone 3 because this is not a rapid advance force. We're only looking at it, only expecting it to advance into zone 2. On the center, we've got open in zone center 1. So that's the green circle. Looking down the open column, we can see under number 1, zone 1, we've got 0. So C1 open equals 0. And then the next zone, C2, is also open. But we can see when we look down the strategy choice open column that for zone 2, it's a plus. So we've got +1 in there. So 0 + 1, that gives us a total of +1 for the center. And then do the same on the right. So right 1 is closed. Look down the closed column. Zone 1 is marked 0, so a factor of 0 for R1 closed. And then for the right zone 2, R2 is a fort. Look down the fort column. We can see there on zone 2, that blue circle is a minus, so that's -1. So on our right, we've got a total of -1. We've got 0, -1. That gives us -1 total on the right, the blue force. So for equal attack, we've got -1 on the left, we've got +1 in the center, and we've got -1 on the right. And then we add in +1 from our random factor. You see the dice there is a 5. If you get a 4 or 5, that's a +1. And the total we get for the equal attack is also 0 points. The last strategy card we chose was ambush. And looking bottom right of the slide, we can see the ambush card there. So the left force is actually an ambush force, the red one. And also the one on the right, the blue force, is also an ambush force. And in the center, we've got a holding force. So on the strategy choice card, we can see we've got the ambush line down the bottom, marked red, and above that, marked orange, we have the holding line. So again, back onto our battlefield on the left side, left one is a fort. So the red force, this is an ambush force. But we're not interested this time in left one because the ambush force is actually going to come in from the side. So we're looking at left 2. So left 2 is hills. So we look down the hills column and we can see that for that ambush force, that red force, the red circle is on zone 2 for hills, and that's 0. So we've got a factor of 0 there. Going across to the right, we can see that our zone right 2 is a fort. So we do the same now for that blue force. On the strategy choice, look across from the ambush row to the fort column, and we're in zone 2 because that's where the ambush force is going to come in, and that's a minus. So we've got a -1 there. And then in the center, we've got a holding force. So we're only interested in the force actually holding in that one zone, which is center 1, which is open. So we're looking across on the orange row now, and that green force, that green circle along the open column, zone 1, we can see as a minus. So we get a -1 there. So if we add up the total for left, center, and right, we've got 0 on the left, -1 in the center, -1 on the right, and we check our random factor. We got a 6 this time, so that's a +2. So that gives us a total of 0 points. Analyzing the strategy with the terrain is the most complicated part of Adjutant Introuvable. Might seem quite difficult at first, but you quickly get the hang of it. It's quite easy. And if you download the rules, it's clearly laid out with lots of diagrams and examples in the rules. So you can learn it quite quickly using this video and using the printed rules. Now, what have we got? So we've got envelop from left, and we got that coming through as -1 points. We got equal attack, and that came through as 0 points, and we got ambush, and that came through as 0 points. So we're looking for the highest points as being the one that Adjutant Introuvable is going to choose as the best strategy. Generally speaking, if it comes through as negative, it's not suitable. If it comes through as positive, then it is a suitable strategy. So we've got two that have come through kind of in between, almost suitable strategies. But we haven't decided which one of those two, equal attack or ambush. So we just need to do a simple dice throw to see which one is preferred, and ambush seems to win. So ambush is the strategy selected by Adjutant Introuvable. Step 4 is deployment. So now we've got the strategy, we need to decide which units are going to go with which force for this ambush strategy. So we can see from the ambush card, we've got an ambush force on the left, an ambush force on the right. In the center, we've got a holding force, and there's also a reserve behind that. So the first thing we need to do is to divide up our units into 3 types. And the 3 types of force we need to have are regular units, mobile units, and support units. So regular units are things just like normal line units. Mobile units are units that can move quickly, like cavalry, light infantry. And then support units are units that are usually kept in reserve and deliver a final blow. So things like divisional artillery might be an example, or guard units. They would be classified as support units. Forces are allocated in the following priority. Number 1, ambush. Number 2, rapid advance. Number 3, advance. Number 4, hold. So on the strategy cards, you can see the ambush forces are marked with a hash. That's the code for an ambush force. Rapid advance, which we don't have on this ambush card, is a double arrow. Advance is just a single arrow, and a holding force, which you can see is on our center force, is an equals sign. So that's the codes used in Adjutant Introuvable for ambush, rapid advance, advance, and hold. And that's the order that we select our troops in. So any force that is an ambush force gets first priority of troops. And then we go and see if we've got a rapid advance, they'd get second priority. Any advancing troops would be third priority, and any holding troops would be a fourth priority. On the ambush strategy card, we've got 2 ambush forces, one on the left, one on the right. So they have equal priority in selecting forces. They both come first. So we need to just break that up. So a simple dice throw decided that the right ambush force was going to take priority. So we're going to start with that one, and we're going to allocate the force for the right ambush. So we've already said that the ambush force is coming in on zone 2. So right 2 is a fort. So we need to know that information, what type of terrain it's coming in on. And if we look on the force allocation chart, which is there on the left-hand side in the center of that picture, we've got a fort column on the right, and then we're looking at the regular troops, the red ones marked with in the red zone, and it's an ambush force. So we look across from the hash line, and we can see there's a factor there of 5+. So for regular forces to deploy in a fort zone, they need a 5+. So we throw 7 green dice and look to see which ones have got a 5+. So we can see that we've got 3 regular forces that are selected. So 3 regular infantry forces are selected. So they become part of the right ambush force. Now we do the same with the mobile. So this is the force marked with the green rectangle. So again, we're coming into the fort zone, and it's an ambush force. So they require a 6 on the dice to be selected. So we throw 3 dice. 2 dice for the cavalry forces, 1 dice for the infantry force there, for those 3 units. And we can see that we got 1-6, so one of the cavalry forces has also been selected for the right ambush force. And then last of all, we do the same thing for the support. So for a support force coming in an ambush to a fort zone, it requires a 4+ to be selected. We throw the dice, you can see the black dice there has got a 2, so it's not selected. So bottom right picture shows the force that is selected for our right ambush force. Our next priority force is our left ambush force. So we do the same with the troops that are remaining. So regular forces now looking at hills rather than a fort, because we can see that left 2 is actually a hill zone. So regular forces being deployed in ambush into a hill zone require a 6. So we throw 4 green dice because we've only got 4 units left. One of them is a 6, so one of those regular units is selected. Now we do the same for mobile forces. So to deploy mobile forces in ambush onto hills, we require a 5+. So we throw 2 dice, one for the cavalry, one for the light infantry, and we see that the light infantry is selected. And finally, we do the same for support. So for support troops to be selected in ambush onto hills, we require a 5+, and you can see the black dice is a 5, so that support artillery unit is also selected. So we've got an infantry unit, a light infantry unit, and an artillery unit selected for our left ambush force. The next priority is to look for rapid advance troops. There are no rapid advance troops on this ambush strategy card. And there are no advanced troops, which is our next priority. So the final priority is holding forces. So we have got a holding force in the center on the ambush strategy card. So we have a look at the location and we see it's center 1, and that's open terrain. So for a regular force to be deployed into open terrain, we require a 6. So we throw a dice for the last 3 regular units, and we get 1-6, so that infantry force is allocated. And then we do the same for the mobile troops, and we see that for mobile troops to deploy in open, we need a 5+, and we throw the dice, we get a 4, so the cavalry force isn't allocated. And then all the support units have already been allocated, so there's nothing to choose from there. So our center force consists of 1 infantry unit. Now, any units that have not been selected automatically get put into the reserve. So the reserve force now consists of 1 infantry unit, 1 cavalry unit, and 1 artillery unit. And you can see that they are now set up. The center is forward of the reserve on the battlefield. So Adjutant Introuvable has chosen the ambush strategy, and he's deployed his forces. So there's only 1 unit on the center holding the line, and that's backed up by a healthy reserve of 1 infantry, 1 cavalry, and 1 artillery unit. On the right, there's an ambush waiting to come in of 3 infantry units and a cavalry unit. And on the left, we have another ambush unit of an infantry unit, a light infantry unit, and an artillery unit. So this is not quite what I was expecting when I deployed my forces. And my orders for the first couple of moves are in place, so I must follow those. And we will see how the battle progresses. I'll do another video that will follow on from this setup procedure that will take us through the battle step by step and show how Adjutant Introuvable tactics work. We've got a strategy, we've got forces allocated, but Adjutant Introuvable doesn't stop there. It also gives some guidance in the battle itself each turn as to what groups of units should do.